There's something undeniably magical about sparkling wine, isn't there?
Yeah.
The gentle pop of the cork,
Oh,
the
yeah.
shimmering bubbles, that first crisp sip, it just screams celebration.
It really does.
But, as delightful as that moment is, the world of sparkling wines is actually far more intricate, more surprising than just being a party drink.
Absolutely. There's a whole universe in that bottle.
Exactly. So in this deep dive, we're going to uncork their captivating history, dive into the surprising science behind the magic. We'll uncover the diverse methods of production, journey through some iconic regions around the globe, and finally, learn how to best enjoy and pair them.
Sounds like a great plan.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
So let's go right back to the beginning, because the story of bubbles is, much more accidental than most people probably realize.
That's true. We think of it as intentional luxury now.
Right. But back in the Middle Ages, those very bubbles were actually seen as a flaw. Can you imagine?
A big flaw. Yeah.
In colder places, fermentation would just stop in the winter. Then, come spring, it'd spontaneously restart when things warmed up. And this created this unwanted fizz. They actually called it devil's wine.
The devil's wine. It's amazing how things change. What was once a fault became, the signature of celebration itself.
Exactly.
And we often hear the legend about Dom Perignon, that he invented champagne, or at least the bubbles. But that's not quite right, is it?
Not really. His real genius wasn't in creating the fizz.
Right. It was more about mastering assemblage, that art of blending different wines to get a consistent style, and crucially, figuring out better ways to seal the bottles.
Okay, so sealing was key.
Hugely key. He was essentially trying to contain that effervescence, to manage it, transforming what was a problem into something controlled, something desirable.
So not creating bubbles, but controlling the chaos. I like that.
Exactly. Controlling chaos. That shift really paved the way for sparkling wine as a luxury item as we know it today.
And then by the 19th century, technology really stepped in to help with that control. Things like remouge,
Riddling, yeah.
riddling, to get the sediment to the neck, and degorgement, actually getting that sediment out. Those innovations made large-scale, consistent production possible.
That's when it really became established as a luxury, not just a kind of happy accident. It became a crafted product.
So fundamentally, what is a sparkling wine at its heart?
Well, simply put, it's a wine with dissolved carbon dioxide, CO2. And that CO2 gets there through a crucial second fermentation.
Oh, the second one. Okay.
And the pressure inside these bottles is pretty remarkable. Think about high-quality champagne. It can reach 5, even 6 atmospheres of pressure.
Wow. How much is that really?
Well, put it this way. That's 2 to 3 times the pressure in your car tire.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a lot.
It is. And it's this intense pressure that creates that amazing visual spectacle of bubbles the perlage when you finally open the bottle.
And it's not just about the bubbles themselves, right? The base wine is critical too.
Oh, absolutely essential. The grapes for sparkling wines are usually picked earlier. They have higher acidity compared to grapes for still wines.
Why is that so important?
That high acidity is the backbone. It gives the wine balance, that lovely vivacity, and helps it age well. It provides that fresh, clean feeling, almost cleanses your palate.
Got it. So acidity is key from the start.
Definitely. And from a physics standpoint, it's kind of cool. The CO2 in the bottle is super saturated,
Super saturated.
meaning there's way more CO2 dissolved in the liquid than would normally be possible at atmospheric pressure. So when you pop the cork, the pressure drops instantly and the CO2 just wants to escape.
Right, hence the bubbles.
But for bubbles to actually form and rise, they need these little things called nucleation points.
Okay, what are those?
Think of tiny microscopic imperfections in the glass, or maybe a speck of dust, or even a fiber from a dishcloth.
Huh? Really?
Yeah. They act like mini launch pads, basically. They give the dissolved gas a place to gather and become the visible bubbles we see streaming upwards. It's quite precise, actually. That's wild, how something so tiny creates such a visual show. And the quality of those bubbles, the perlage, that tells you something about the wine itself, doesn't it?
It really does. Generally, finer, more persistent bubbles, ones that keep coming in a steady stream, often indicate a really well-made wine. And that's often linked to longer aging.
Which brings us to a really key concept, autolysis.
Ah, yes, autolysis. Crucial.
This is when the wine spends time hanging out with the dead yeast cells after that second fermentation.
Exactly. And it's not just about flavor, though. It absolutely adds those amazing notes like brioche, toast, nuts.
Love those.
Right. But autolysis also contributes significantly to the stability and the fineness of the bubbles themselves, makes them smaller and last longer.
Okay, so flavor and texture. Interesting.
And temperature, as we touched on, is vital too. Serving it between 6 and 8 degrees Celsius, that's the sweet spot.
Why that specific range?
Well, it helps retain the dissolved gas. If it's too warm, the bubbles escape way too fast, the wine goes flat quickly, too cold, and you don't get all the aromas. Makes sense. And glassware matters too, right? The shape of the glass.
Definitely. A flute, or even better, a tulip-shaped glass, is designed to concentrate those lovely aromas and maintain that beautiful continuous stream of bubbles. It really enhances the whole experience: sight, smell, taste.
So we've covered the science, the history, the bubbles themselves. But what does this all mean for what's actually in your glass? It really boils down to how it's made, the production method.
Exactly. And there are some really distinct approaches out there.
Let's start with the big one, the one often seen as the gold standard for complexity. The traditional method, sometimes called the Champenoise method.
Right, the traditional method. It definitely earns its prestige. The absolute key thing here is that the second fermentation happens inside each individual bottle.
Okay, bottle by bottle.
Yep. You find this in Champagne, obviously, but also Cava in Spain, Franciacorta in Italy, and lots of top-tier New World producers, California, Australia, England now too. It's a slower, more involved process.
It sounds meticulous. Can you kind of walk us through the steps?
Sure. So first, you need a base wine, specifically made to be high in acidity, relatively low in alcohol.
Got it.
Then comes the art of assemblage. This is where the cellar master, the chef de cave, gets creative. They blend different base wines, maybe different grapes, different vineyards, even different years, to achieve either a consistent house style or to express a particular vintage. It's like their secret recipe.
The blending part sounds crucial.
Oh, it is. Then they add the liqueur de tirage. That's a little mix of wine, a very precise amount of sugar, and specific yeast strains. This goes into each bottle.
And that's what starts the second fermentation.
Exactly. They seal the bottle, usually with a crown cap like a beer bottle initially, and that second fermentation begins right there inside the sealed bottle. The yeast eats the sugar, produces a little more alcohol, and critically, the CO2 gets trapped.
Creating the bubbles, and this is where autolysis comes in again.
Precisely. Once the yeast finishes its job, it dies and settles as sediment, known as lees or boras. The wine then ages on these lees. For Cava, it's a minimum of 9 months. For vintage champagne, it can be many, many years.
And that aging makes a big difference.
A huge difference. The breakdown of those dead yeast cells releases all sorts of complex compounds. That's where you get those signature secondary aromas: brioche, toast, biscuit, nutty notes. And it adds that wonderful creamy texture to the wine, too. It's truly transformative.
Okay, so after all that patient aging, how do they get rid of that sediment, the lees, without losing all those precious bubbles they just created?
Right, good question. That's where remouge, or riddling, comes in. It's the process of gradually turning and tilting the bottles to move all that sediment down into the neck right against the cap.
I've seen pictures of those old racks, the pupeters.
Exactly. Traditionally done by hand, very laborious. Now it's often done using large automated cages called gyropellets, much faster.
Okay, so sediment's in the neck. Now what?
Now comes degorgement. They typically dip the neck of the bottle into a freezing brine solution. This freezes the sediment into a little ice plug. Then they pop off the crown cap, and the internal pressure shoots out that frozen plug of sediment. Whoosh! Done with remarkable precision, losing very little wine and pressure.
Wow. Okay. And then there's one final step, the dosage.
Exactly. After disgorgement, the bottle isn't quite full and the wine is bone dry, so they top it up with the liqueur d'expédition. This is usually a mixture of wine and a specific amount of sugar.
So this determines how sweet the final wine is.
Precisely. The amount of sugar in that dosage dictates the final sweetness level from brut nature, which has 0 added sugar, all the way up to doux, which is quite sweet. It's the final touch that balances the wine and defines its style.
Okay, so that's the traditional method. Complex, time-consuming, really artisanal. But as you said, not all sparkling wine is made like that. Some are all about immediate freshness.
Right. Which brings us to a totally different approach. The Charmat method, often just called the tank method.
Tank method. Sounds more industrial.
Well, it's definitely geared towards larger volumes and preserving primary fruit character. With Charmat, that crucial second fermentation happens in large, pressurized stainless steel tanks called autoclaves.
Not in individual bottles.
Correct. This method is famously used for Prosecco in Italy and also for things like Lambrusco. The whole point here is freshness and youth. It really emphasizes those primary fruit aromas, green apple, pear, peach, white flowers.
So less of those bready, yeasty notes from autolysis.
Minimal to none, typically. The wine doesn't spend significant time on the lees, like in the traditional method. This results in a cleaner, much more fruit-forward profile. And because it's faster and more cost-effective, Charmat wines tend to be more accessibly priced.
And even within Prosecco, there's a quality difference tied to tank time, right? Like DOC versus DOCG.
Absolutely. Basic Prosecco DOC requires at least 30 days for that second fermentation in the tank. But the higher quality DACG Prosecco from areas like Conegliano Valdobbiadene needs a minimum of 90 days. That extra time allows for better integration of the bubbles, a finer texture.
Right.
So yeah, even within Charmat, there are nuances.
Okay, moving on. There's another Italian method, the Asti Method. Sounds specific.
It is. This one's all about sweet, aromatic simplicity. Unlike the others, there's only one fermentation. It starts in a tank, but it's stopped early, usually by chilling it down.
Stopped early. Why?
To retain a good amount of the natural grape sugar, making the wine sweet, and also to keep the alcohol level low. This method is used for Moscato d'Asti and Asti Spumante, both from Piedmont in Italy, using the aromatic Moscato grape.
So what's the flavor profile like?
Think intensely aromatic and sweet. Juicy peach, apricot, honey, orange blossom. It's usually quite light, fizzy rather than fully sparkling, and often low in alcohol, maybe 5 to 7%, almost like a delicious bubbly fruit juice for grown-ups.
Sounds delightful for dessert. Okay, one more method, and this one sounds really old school. The ancestral method, or pet nat.
Ah, pet nat. Yeah, it's become quite trendy, but it's actually the oldest way of making sparkling wine. Talk about rustic authenticity.
How does it work?
It's also a single fermentation, like Asti, but the key difference is that it starts in a tank and is then bottled before fermentation is complete. It finishes fermenting right there in the bottle, trapping the resulting CO2. There's no added liqueur de tirage.
So kind of letting nature take its course in the bottle?
Pretty much. Pet nats are often a bit cloudy because they usually don't undergo degorgement, so there's still some yeast sediment left inside. The bubbles tend to be softer, less intense. The style is often described as natural, maybe a bit unpredictable, with notes of fresh fruit, yeast, sometimes even a cider-like quality. It's a glimpse into the past.
4 distinct methods, 4 very different styles of sparkling wine. Fascinating.
It really shows the diversity available.
Okay, now let's take that quick trip around the globe you mentioned, because where the wine is made adds another layer of complexity and character. We have to start with the benchmark, the monarch, Champagne.
You really do. Champagne is synonymous with luxury, with celebration, for very good reasons. The terroir there is absolutely key. You've got that cool climate, essential for acidity, combined with unique chalky soils. That chalk gives a specific minerality you don't find elsewhere.
It's not just a name, it's a specific place creating a specific taste.
Exactly. And the grapes are fundamental too. Primarily Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Pinot Meunier.
What does each bring to the blend?
Though Pinot Noir generally provides structure, body, and red fruit notes. Chardonnay brings elegance, finesse, citrus flavors, and excellent aging potential. And Pinot Meunier adds fruitiness and makes the wine approachable younger. The art of the blend is combining these to create balance and complexity.
And within Champagne, there are even specific vineyard rankings. Grand Cru, Premier Cru.
Yes, those designate the highest quality vineyard sites based on a historical classification. Grapes from these sites command higher prices and are often used in the top cuvées.
And the styles vary too, right? Based on the grapes used.
Definitely. You have Blanc de Blanc, which is 100% Chardonnay, usually very elegant, focused, great longevity. Then Blanc de Noir, made entirely from the black grapes. Pinot Noir and Dormeunier, typically richer, fuller-bodied, more red fruit character.
And Rosé, how is that made?
2 ways, mainly. Either by letting the black grape skins macerate briefly with the juice to pick up color, or, more commonly in Champagne, by blending a small amount of still red wine into the white base wine before the second fermentation.
And we already talked about the sweetness levels from Brut Nature up to Doux, with Brut being the most common. What about the producers? Big houses versus small growers?
Right, you have the large famous Grandes Maisons, think Moet and Chandon, Veuve-Clicquot, Krug, Bollinger. They focus on consistency, blending widely to achieve their signature house style year after year.
The familiar names.
Exactly. But then you also have the vignerons indépendants, the grower producers. These are farmers who make wine from their own grapes, often focusing on expressing the specific terroir of their village or vineyard. It can be a very different, often more individualistic style.
So much variety just within Champagne itself.
Yeah.
Okay, where next? Spain.
Let's head to Spain for Cava. Cava has a really interesting story. It was basically born out of crisis after phylloxera wiped out many vineyards in the 19th century. Spanish producers saw what was happening in Champagne and adapted the traditional method, but using their own native grapes.
So it's primarily defined by the method, not just one region.
Correct. While most cava comes from the Penedès region in Catalonia near Barcelona, it can legally be made in several other designated areas across Spain. It's more of a method wine than a strict terroir wine like Champagne.
And the grapes are different too. What are the main ones?
The traditional trio is Macabeo, which brings freshness, Perlata for elegance and floral notes, and Xarel-Lo, which is really important for structure, body, and aging potential. It often gives cava a distinctive, slightly earthy note. Chardonnay and Pinot Noir are also allowed now, but the traditional grapes are still the heart of cava.
And like Champagne, Cava has aging requirements that tell you about the style.
Yes, and they're quite clear. Basic cava needs 9 months on the lees. Cava Reserva needs at least 15 months. Cava Gran Reserva requires 30 months. And then there's a top tier, Cava de Perlage Calificado, which demands 36 months minimum aging and comes from a specific single vineyard.
So longer aging generally means more complexity, those autolytic notes coming through.
Exactly. You can really taste the difference between a young, fresh Cava and a Gran Reserva. And you see big names like Freixenet and Codorníu who really put Cava on the map globally, but also many smaller, quality-focused producers.
Okay, from Spain, let's hawk over to Italy and talk Prosecco. It's exploded in popularity, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Prosecco has really captured the global market with its fresh, fruity, and generally unpretentious style. It's become the go-to, affordable bubbly for many people.
Where does it mostly come from?
The main production area is the DOC regions in Veneto and Friuli Venezia Giulia in northeast Italy. But the real quality heartland is the smaller DOCG zones, particularly Conegliano, Valdobbiadene, and Asolo. These hillside vineyards produce more concentrated, complex wines. There's even a Grand Cru equivalent called Cartith within Conegliano, Valdobbiadene.
And the grape is primarily Glera.
Yes, Glera is the star here. It's known for those vibrant primary fruit aromas, green apple, pear, maybe some white peach, along with lovely floral notes like acacia or wisteria.
And made using the Charmat method, the tank method we discussed.
Right, that tank fermentation is key to preserving those delicate fruit and floral aromas. It's all about capturing that immediate freshness, unlike the lees-aged complexity of traditional method wines.
And the styles usually indicate sweetness level, but maybe differently than Champagne.
Yes, the terms can be a bit confusing. Brut is the driest style for Prosecco. Extra dry is actually slightly sweeter than Brut, and it's the classic, most popular style. And then dry is sweeter still. So extra dry isn't extra dry, it's off dry.
Good to know. Okay, so Champagne, Cava, Prosecco are the big three, but there's so much more out there, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're just scratching the surface. Italy alone has Franciacorta from Lombardy, made using the traditional method, often considered Italy's answer to Champagne. There's Trento DOC, high-altitude sparkling wines from Trentino, also traditional method, known for their elegance. And don't forget Lambrusco, a totally different beast, often red or rosé, lightly sparkling, from Emilia-Romagna, fantastic with food.
What about other countries? Germany.
Germany makes Sekt. A lot is simple tank method fizz, but look for Windsor Sekt. That means it's made by a wine grower using the traditional method, often from Riesling grapes, which gives it a totally unique aromatic profile. Petrol, lime, honeyed notes with age. Really interesting stuff.
And wasn't there something about Australia? Sparkling Shiraz.
Yes. Sparkling Shiraz is uniquely Australian style. A full-bodied, dry, red sparkling wine. It sounds weird, but it can be incredibly delicious, especially with grilled meats or barbecue. A real conversation starter.
Wow. And I imagine places like the US, South America, Portugal, England are all making great sparklers too.
Definitely. California has a long history of quality traditional method sparkling wine. Oregon is doing great things. South America, particularly Argentina and Chile, are producing some excellent value options. Portugal has its own styles. And England, especially the South Coast with its chalky soils similar to Champagne, is now producing world-class traditional method sparkling wines that are winning major awards. The map of quality sparkling wine is constantly expanding.
It really makes you think, with all this variety, what kind of bubble adventure should you go on next? So many choices.
Great problem to have.
It really is.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's clear that it's not just about the pop and fizz. The whole journey from the vine right into the glass is crucial. Understanding the care involved really elevates the experience, I think.
I completely agree. And it starts right there in the vineyard. Viticulture is fundamental,
We mentioned cold climates being important for acidity.
essential. You need that coolness to retain acidity as the grapes ripen slowly. And the choice of grape variety is deliberate too. Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Glera, etc. They're chosen for their specific balance, and importantly, their primary aromas aren't usually too overpowering. You want complexity to build during the winemaking.
And the work in the vineyard itself.
Meticulous, it's all about quality over quantity, careful pruning to limit yields, and then, critically, early manual harvesting.
Why early and manual?
Early to capture that peak acidity and lower sugar levels needed for the base wine. Manual harvesting ensures the grapes arrive at the winery intact, preventing premature crushing, oxidation, or unwanted color extraction, especially if you're making white wine from black grapes, like in Champagne.
So a lot of care goes into just getting the grapes off the vine.
Absolutely. Then comes the unseen craft in the winery, vinification and aging. It starts with really gentle pressing. Often they only use the first lightest press juice, the cuvee, for the top sparkling wines because it's the purest.
Less extraction from skins and seeds.
Exactly. This juice undergoes its first fermentation to create that high-acid, low-alcohol base wine. Then, as we discussed, comes the assemblage, the blending, the winemaker's art, really, composing the final blend before the second fermentation.
And we covered the liqueur de tirage to start the bubbles, and the liqueur d'expédition for the final sweetness. But let's revisit autolysis. It seems so important.
It's truly transformational, especially for traditional method wines. That extended contact time with the dead yeast lees, it fundamentally changes the wine. It adds those complex flavors, brioche, toast, nuts, sometimes creamy notes, but it also enhances the texture, giving the wine a richer, creamier mouthfeel. And it helps integrate the bubbles, making them finer and more persistent.
So it affects aroma, taste, and texture.
Wow.
And then the final steps, remouge and degorgement, getting that sediment out cleanly. It's quite a journey for that bottle.
It really is. Precision and patience are key.
So, knowing all that, how do we best appreciate it? The sensory journey. Let's start with appearance. What should you look for?
Well, the color can give you clues lighter for younger wines, maybe more golden for aged ones. But the most important visual cue for sparkling wine is the perlage. Are the bubbles fine? Are they persistent? Do they rise in elegant, continuous streams? That often indicates quality and careful production.
Okay, then the aromas. You mentioned layers.
Yes, think in layers. First, primary aromas, these come directly from the grape. Fruity notes like apple, citrus, pear, or maybe floral hints.
Like in Prosecco.
Exactly. Then secondary aromas, these come from the winemaking process, primarily fermentation and especially autolysis in traditional method wines. This is where you get those bread, brioche, biscuit, pastry, yeasty notes.
Complex ones.
Right. And finally, tertiary aromas. These develop with bottle aging after disgorgement. Think notes of honey, nuts, dried fruit, sometimes even mushroom or toasted nuances in very old wines. It's like a story unfolding in the glass.
Fascinating. And on the palate, what are the key things to notice?
Okay, first and foremost, acidity. Is it vibrant, zesty, mouth-watering? That's the backbone, providing freshness and balance.
Then sweetness, which we know is determined by the dosage.
Yeah.
From bone-dry brute nature to noticeably sweet demi-sec or dew.
Exactly. Pay attention to the body and texture. Does it feel light and crisp or richer and creamier? That creaminess often comes from that lovely autolysis.
Right.
And finally, the persistence or finish. How long do the flavors and the sensation of the bubbles linger after you swallow? A long, pleasing finish is usually a sign of a high-quality wine.
So thinking about all that,
Mm-hmm.
what stands out most to you when you're tasting a sparkling wine? Is there one thing you focus on first?
That's a tough one. For me, it's often the interplay between the acidity and the texture initially. Is it bracingly fresh, or does it have that creamy complexity? And then I start digging into the specific aromas and how long they last. But that initial impression of freshness versus richness is often key for me.
Interesting. Okay, some practical tips. Serving and storage. We mentioned the temperature. 6 to 8 degrees Celsius.
Yep, crucial for keeping those bubbles happy and the aromas expressive.
And use the right glass, a flute or tulip shape. No wide coupes if you want to appreciate the aromas and bubbles properly.
Please, no coupes. They look glamorous, but the bubbles dissipate way too fast.
Good point. And storage, this one seems important and maybe counterintuitive for wine. Store sparkling wine upright.
Yes, absolutely. Unlike still wine, you want to store sparkling wine standing up. The internal pressure keeps the cork moist enough from the inside. Laying it down for long periods can risk the cork drying out from the outside, potentially compromising the seal and letting that precious CO2 escape. Upright is the way to go for long-term storage.
Good tip. Okay, finally, let's talk food. Harmonizing with gastronomy. Sparkling wine seems incredibly versatile.
It's perhaps the most versatile wine category for food pairing. That high acidity and the cleansing effect of the bubbles cut through richness, refresh the palate, and complement a huge range of flavors.
So how do we pair by style? Let's say a brut or extra brut.
Those drier styles are fantastic aperitifs on their own, but they also shine with lighter dishes. Think raw seafood oysters are classic for a reason. Sushi, sashimi, light fish dishes, fresh cheeses, even fried foods, as the acidity cuts through the fat beautifully.
Okay, what about something slightly sweeter, like an extra dry or demi-sec, like that popular style of Prosecco?
Those are surprisingly good with dishes that have a bit of sweetness or spice. Think some styles of Asian cuisine, Thai, Vietnamese, where there's that sweet, sour, spicy interplay. Also great with fruit-based desserts that aren't overly sweet.
And rosé.
Rosé sparkling wines are incredibly flexible. The slight red fruit character makes them great with poultry, grilled salmon, tuna, even lighter meats like pork or veal. Some fuller-bodied rosé champagnes can even stand up to lamb.
Wow, okay. And those iconic regional pairings, they exist for a reason, right?
They really do. Champagne and oysters, that minerality and brininess is just electric together.
Classic luxury.
Prosecco and Italian antipasti, cured meats, olives, cheeses. The wine's freshness just cuts through and gets the meal started perfectly.
Makes sense.
And Cava and Spanish tapas. The variety of tapas matches the versatility of Cava styles, and again, that acidity cleanses the palate between bites. It's clear, wherever you are, whatever you're eating, there's likely a sparkling wine that will pair wonderfully.
It really seems like the ultimate food-friendly wine.
It often is. The range of styles, from bone-dry and mineral to fruity and fresh, to rich and complex, to sweet and aromatic, there's just so much to explore.
So reflecting on all this, the sheer diversity in the world of sparkling wine is incredible. From what was essentially a winemaking flaw,
The devil's wine.
to this incredibly sophisticated, globally celebrated art form. Whether it's the complex, toasty notes of a vintage champagne or the bright, easy-drinking charm of a Prosecco, each bottle really does feel like an invitation to celebrate something.
It does. And the future looks exciting too. There's constant innovation happening, more precise fermentation control, a big focus on sustainability in the vineyards and wineries. Plus, new regions are constantly emerging and proving they can make world-class bubbles.
So the adventure continues.
Always. And I think for anyone who enjoys wine, understanding this whole journey, the history, the science, the meticulous craft, the regional differences, it just adds another layer of appreciation, doesn't it? It turns drinking it from just, having a nice beverage into a richer experience. It helps you understand why it tastes the way it does.
It transforms moments into memories, maybe with a bit more understanding behind the magic.
Well said. It's a truly multifaceted drink.
So maybe the final thought for everyone listening is this. Now that you understand a bit more about the incredible science, the artistry, the history packed into every single one of those tiny bubbles, how will your next celebratory pop, your next sip, taste and feel differently?
Something to ponder over your next glass.